Rebirth on the wedding night. I castrated my husband with my own hands. In my past life, he sent my unconscious body to a fool's bed. And when I begged him, he crushed my fingers underfoot and said coldly, "Serving a nobleman is a blessing for you." This life, as the wedding candle pierced through his trousers. I smiled and whispered in his ear, "Being castrated is your blessing."
1.
One night and she's pregnant? Is she really pure? My mother-in-law, Lu Shi, kept her voice low. If the Dong family refuses to acknowledge it, what are we going to do? I was standing right outside the door and my entire body stiffened. It felt like I had fallen into an ice cave. In the next moment, my husband Lu Zi's words stabbed through me like a knife. How would I know? I never touched her. But there was blood on the bed the night we consummated, so I suppose everything's fine. Foolish girl. Doesn't she know that bleeding can also happen with her period? If that child isn't from the Dong family's fool, they'll never let this go. We might even have to return the 30 taels of silver. The world spun around me. So, the man on the wedding night wasn't my husband Lu Zi. It was that half-witted son from the Dong family. Memories surged back like a crashing tide. The cup of wine we shared that night. The searing pain when I woke up, feeling as though my body had been torn apart. The glaring bloodstain on the brocade bedding. And the 3 figures standing beside the bed. Lu Zi, his mother, and the fool from the Dong family who always drooled and giggled whenever he saw me. It wasn't a nightmare. They sold me for 30 taels of silver. They sold my purity, sold my life. No wonder, in the 2 months since our wedding, Lu Zi had never shown me a kind face. His words were always cruel. He'd beat me for no reason. He wouldn't even step into my room. I remembered what my concubine mother once said, "Men show their true colors after marriage." I thought he was just cold-hearted, but I never imagined it was this vile. My stomach churned. I bent over and dry heaved, not realizing I'd made a sound. "You shameless wench. Eavesdropping, were you?" The mother-in-law suddenly yanked the door open. How much did you hear?" I looked up, tears streaked down my cheeks, and blood still clung to my lips. Lu Zi stood under the eaves, holding a smoking pipe between his fingers. His gaze cold as a frozen pond, as if he were looking at a rotting corpse. You planned this together?" My voice trembled. From the corner of my eye, I glanced toward the kitchen counter, where a gleaming kitchen knife rested. Suddenly, Lu Shi let out a shrill, triumphant laugh. She pulled out a yellowed piece of paper from her waistband and unfolded it with a snap. Black ink on white paper, red fingerprint, and all. "Your lowly concubine mother accepted 3 taels of silver from me, and sold you body and soul. This isn't a bride price. It's a deed of sale. From now on, whether you live or die, whether you serve as my fool son's wife or as livestock, you have no say in the matter." I stared at the crooked signature and bright red fingerprint on the contract. A metallic taste surged in my throat, and I vomited blood. "A peasant slut like you think you deserve to marry my son, a future scholar?" Lu Shi sneered, her eyes full of contempt. "If it weren't for that cursed ghost of a father of yours arranging this marriage early on, someone like you wouldn't even be fit to marry the Dong family's fool." "Lu Zi." I raised a trembling finger and pointed at him. When you knelt before my father's grave and swore an oath, have you fed all that to the dogs? That year, when you were nearly hacked to death by mountain bandits, it was my father who carried you across an icy river. He walked 20 li in the snow to find a doctor. To save you, he caught a chill that never healed. He died within 3 years. Lu Zi slowly walked over, towering above me. If my father hadn't foolishly insisted that I repay his so-called kindness, would I ever have married a vulgar village wench like you? He suddenly reached out and grabbed my chin. "Have you forgotten? The day your father died. You knelt down and said it yourself." He leaned in and breathed hot air into my ear. "You were willing to be a slave." My eyes burned with rage. I grabbed the kitchen knife and swung it at him, but he kicked me square in the chest, sending me sprawling. You dare raise a knife at me, you filthy wench? Lu Zi grabbed a handful of my tangled hair and dragged me across the floor. Believe me when I say I can send you straight to hell right now. Blood oozed from the corner of my mouth, but suddenly I smiled. If that damn thing is so useless anyway. I pulled my knee up and rammed hard between his legs. Then let me do you a favor and get rid of it.
Ah.
Lu Zi let out a blood-curdling scream, dropping to his knees. His fingers dug into the dirt like claws. Lu Shi swung a brass teapot at me. I twisted to avoid it. Boiling water splashed on the stone floor, releasing a cloud of steam. Seizing the moment, I grabbed the kitchen knife and ran barefoot toward the courtyard gate. I had to escape. I had to get out of this hell. Their curses tore through the night behind me. I raced toward the village entrance, the wind slicing my face like blades. Suddenly, a cramp twisted through my abdomen. Crack. My ankle rolled. I crashed hard onto the gravel path. When I looked up, Lu Zi was already within 3 steps. His robe was barely stained. I hadn't hit hard enough earlier. Run. Why don't you run now, you filthy bitch? He sneered and stomped down on my left hand, crushing my fingertips. The pain was unbearable. Serving a nobleman is your blessing. Don't you dare refuse my kindness. He bent down, breath thick with alcohol and blood. His face inches from mine. I stared at the throbbing vein on his neck and smiled. With my right hand, I slowly reached behind me for the knife. What are you grinning at, you wench? I'm laughing at you. You call yourself a man? You wear that cuckold's cap quite well. In a flash, I drew the knife from behind my back. Swish. The blade gleamed like lightning. It sliced across his throat. Warm blood sprayed across my face. Lu Zi's eyes went wide. He clutched at his neck, blood gushing between his fingers, and collapsed to the ground. Murder. Lu Shi shrieked and charged at me. I swung the knife backward, slicing her shoulder. But it wasn't fatal. In the distance, torchlights flared like dragons. Villagers were rushing over. I looked down at my blood-stained hands, gently caressing my still flat belly. This cursed child must not remain. I raised the knife high, aimed it at my own waist.
Oft.
The moment the pain hit, I felt release. Just before darkness swallowed me, all I could hear was Lu Shi crawling toward me, and the villagers' horrified cries. Go get the village head. Someone's been killed.
2.
When I opened my eyes again, the blare of Swona horns filled the air. I jolted upright, only to find myself dressed in a bright red wedding gown, a bridal veil draped over my head. I had returned to my wedding night. I tore off the veil and looked around. The Lu family's wedding hall was bathed in red candlelight. On the table, the nuptial wine shimmered amber. So this was a grudge that wouldn't end until one of us died. My fingers twisted the veil until it made a tearing sound. Even my breath was shaking. The bronze mirror reflected my twisted expression. Perfect. My nails, painted red, dug into my palm. Since heaven has shown mercy and granted me a second chance, I'll make sure every single person in the Lu family dies with no grave to be buried in. Just then, I heard Lu Shi shrieking from outside the door. No need to rush, bride. The wedding ceremony starts right away. I rushed to the door, only to find it bolted shut from the outside. My eyes landed on the nuptial wine. I quickly poured half into the ceremonial teacup. To avoid suspicion, I also took a small portion from Lu Zi's cup and evened it out. At that moment, the carved wooden door creaked open. Lu Shi walked in, holding a lacquered tray. Steam rose from the bowl of chicken soup. Have some soup to settle your stomach. The nuptial wine is quite strong. I reached out and took it naturally, about to drink, but then a sudden chill ran down my spine.
Wait.
What if the nuptial wine was just a decoy? What if the real drug was hidden in this soup? In my past life, I drank the soup, then immediately proceeded to the ceremony and drank the wine. Could it be? Oh no. I pretended to slip, and the hot soup spilled right onto her lap. You wretched little slut, she shrieked, jumping up like a hen with its feathers scorched. This is brand new Hangzhou silk. I grabbed a rag and feigned panic. It's all my fault. Should I help you change clothes? She kicked me aside. Get out of my way. As she turned into the inner room, I slipped the stolen medicine packet from my sleeve, the one I had picked from her when I pretended to help her earlier. The powder in my palm was slightly damp. I recalled her words from my past life. Black and white contract, red seal and fingerprint. Your lowborn concubine mother sold you to me for 3 taels of silver. Tears fell onto the medicine packet, staining it with bitter blotches. So even my own mother had a hand in this. The door slammed shut, snapping me out of my thoughts. I hurriedly opened the packet, poured all the powder into my sleeve pouch, then grabbed a handful of ash from the incense burner and filled the empty packet. I folded it back to how it was and tossed it onto the floor tiles. My eyes swept across the bridal chamber and locked onto a celadone teapot. An idea struck. From the inner room came Lucia's curses. You rotten jinx. These were my new silk pants. Suddenly, she let out a sharp shriek. Where's my medicine packet? The door burst open. Lucia rushed out in embroidered slippers, the front of her long underwear still damp. What's the matter, dear mother-in-law? I sat calmly in the chair, my foot resting right on top of the medicine packet. She grabbed my wrist. Did you see my medicine packet? I quickly shook my head. I haven't. What does it look like? I can help you look. Before I could finish, she yanked me to the floor. The medicine packet slipped out from under my shoe. She hastily stuffed it into her waistband and even gave it a proud pat. Biting back the pain, I climbed to my feet and poured her a cup of tea. Have some cool tea to calm down, dear mother-in-law. The powder I had hidden beneath my fingernails slipped silently into the porcelain cup meant only for her. The drug dissolved instantly, colorless and tasteless. Humph, at least you know your manners. She snatched the tea and drank it in one gulp. I watched the wrinkled skin on her throat bob with every swallow. In my past life, I had gotten dizzy not long after drinking the nuptial wine. This old hag should last just long enough to finish the ceremony. Lucia grabbed a bowl and rushed to the kitchen to fetch more chicken soup. She quickly returned with the lacquered tray. The last bowl was spilled. Hurry up and drink this one. I spotted the ash floating on top and accepted the bowl with both hands. I drank it in big gulps, without hesitation. If heaven had granted me a second life, then surely the Bodhisattva would help me survive this as well. When I handed her the empty bowl, Lucia's face lit up with forced smiles. Just then, a knock came from the door. Mother, why are you still dawdling? The village chief and the groom have arrived. We might miss the auspicious hour. I'm coming. Lucia slapped the table and stood up. Before leaving, she shot me another glare. Wipe up the floor. What kind of bride receives guests in such filth? Receive guests? I touched the powder still left in my sleeve and let out a cold laugh. The honored guest tonight. You'll be the one greeting him yourself. 3. The sharp sound of the Suona tore through the night as the matchmaker helped me step into the wedding hall. Through the veil's slit, I caught a glimpse of the ceremonial platform. Mother-in-law Lu sat beside the village chief, Dong Lijing. The smiles on their faces were disturbingly identical, each wrinkle steeped in calculation. Beside them, my groom never once spared me a glance. First bow to heaven and earth. I bent stiffly at the waist, and whispers from the guests exploded around me. How is Dong Lijing qualified to sit as the elder? Sure, that's Lu Xiaotsai's adoptive father. I must separate them, otherwise there's no chance of winning. But when I noticed the old witch's sharp, alert eyes without a hint of drowsiness, my heart sank. Had the knockout drug been too mild? While offering tea, I used my wide sleeve as cover and deftly flicked a fresh dose of powder into the teacup. The old hag noticed nothing. She tilted her head back and drank it all, the loose skin on her throat squirming like maggots. Send them to the bridal chamber. The matchmaker pushed me and Lu Zi forward, guiding us to drink the ceremonial wine together. Through the slit in my veil, I saw the cold expression on his face. No guilt, no hesitation. Just like in my past life, when he crushed my fingers underfoot with such ease, as if it were only natural. Once he drank this wine, I swore he wouldn't live past tonight. "My lady, time to drink," he said, his voice warm, yet his eyes held nothing but frost. I lowered my head shyly, letting my painted nails trace lightly along the rim of the cup. The final pinch of knockout powder fell into his drink. But then he smiled. The cup touched his lips, but his Adam's apple didn't move. Not a single drop was gone. Ceremonial wine. You drink half, then exchange cups. He hadn't drunk any at all. A chill swept over me. I suddenly remembered. In my past life, I had been full of joy, thinking I'd married the perfect man, never once noticing that he never touched the wine. Cold sweat drenched my wedding dress.
What now?
"My lord, why don't you drink this wine?" I asked, forcing a smile as my fingertips trembled. He narrowed his eyes slightly, leaning closer. "It's meant to be savored slowly. But since I'm tired today, why not let my lady drink it for me instead?" I pretended to feel faint, touching my forehead and swaying gently. I feel a little dizzy." His gaze shifted, scanning me from head to toe. "If you don't wish to drink, then don't. I'll go entertain the guests first." He lightly lifted a corner of my veil, then abruptly let go. "My lady, wait patiently. I'll come back and lift the veil properly." I instinctively grabbed his sleeve. "My lord, can't you stay? If he didn't drink that wine, how would I bring him down?" He slowly pulled his sleeve from my grip. "If you're tired, rest. I won't be long." As the veil swayed with his retreating steps, I saw the curve of his lips as he turned away. He left with a cold, decisive air. Not even a trace of hesitation. Truly heartless. Then creak, the door closed. I tore off the veil in a rush.
There was no time.
I needed a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. I stood and looked around the bridal chamber. The hairpin in the vanity box was too thin. The porcelain pillow, too heavy. Only the candlestick, with its 3-inch iron spike glinting faintly, would do. That would have to be it. Then the sound of the door slowly creaking open made every muscle in my body tighten. In my past life, I had already lost consciousness by now. So I rushed back to the embroidered bed, threw the veil over myself again, and pretended to have fainted. My heart thundered in my chest. Through the gap at the bottom of the veil, I saw 3 pairs of shoes approach. A pair of embroidered shoes with a lotus motif, mud still clinging to the tips, hurried steps. It had to be Lucia. A pair of straw shoes dragging against the stone floor, with a shhhshhh sound. Must be the simpleton. A pair of black official boots, still caked with drying yellow mud, their steps heavy as muffled thunder. Dong Lijing. Lucia's breath, reeking of cheap lead-based powder, hit my face. She gripped my chin. "Sleeping so sweetly, aren't you?" Before she could finish, her body swayed. Her grip on my chin suddenly went slack. She staggered a few steps and collapsed heavily onto the edge of the bed. Dong Lijing frowned and stepped forward. "Madam Lu, have you drunk too much?" Lu Shi shook her head, struggling to stay upright. "I'm fine." She turned to the fool and barked. "Ain't you? Hurry up. Your father's teaching you how to consummate the marriage himself." The bed dipped suddenly under the weight of the fool. The stench of rot clung to him. He clumsily yanked off my veil, and warm drool splattered across my face. "Wife, sleep." "Hold it." Dong Lijing suddenly stopped him, his murky eyes sweeping over me as he began loosening his jade belt. "I'll check the goods for my son first." Lucia struggled to her feet and grabbed his sleeve. "You bastard." The 30 taels were for the fool's seed. She panted heavily, yet her filthy eyes glinted with madness. "You want to take turns with your son?"
Fine.
"Add another 30 taels." Dong Lijing sneered, stroking his beard. "Who knows if she can even bear children? But with both of us." His greasy fingers made a crude gesture. "We'll guarantee a healthy baby boy. Then pay more." Lu Shi suddenly shrieked. Her frail body exploded with manic energy. "One more man, one more share." "Useless hag." Dong Lijing snapped, slapping a silver note from his robe. "Take this and scram." Don't ruin my good time. If this doesn't work, I'll make you pay back every coin with interest. Lu Shi tried to demand more, but Dong Lijing flung her out the door, dragging the fool along with her. Keep an eye on her, he said to the old hag at the door. I lay there, my entire body frozen, nails digging into my palm. In my past life, I thought it was only the fool, but I never knew. This old beast was part of it too.
They all stood at my bedside that night.
A tear slid down my cheek in silence. Lu Zi, you've truly destroyed me. My fingers slowly moved beneath the brocade quilt until I touched the cold, hard porcelain pillow. This life. I will make you all pay in blood.
4.
Outside the door, there was suddenly a dull thud, as if someone had collapsed heavily. Immediately after came the mad pounding of the fool Anyo against the door. Bang bang. The door panel trembled, dust falling in cascades. The village official cursed and turned around, a damn fool trying to get himself killed. Right then, I suddenly swung the porcelain pillow and smashed it hard against the back of his head. With a muffled thud, his bulky body stiffened instantly, his small green eyes losing focus. I took advantage and struck again. The porcelain pillow shattered instantly. He fell like a mountain of flesh, collapsing with such weight that the bed creaked under the strain. I quickly rolled off the bed and straddled the official. I pried open his thick lips and aimed an iron nail at his upper palate. No, that angle would get stuck on the gums. Isn't the Lord here to inspect the goods? I whispered softly, then shifted the nail to press against his round nostril. The instant the nail was shoved in, his whole body twitched, but it only went in half an inch before hitting a hard stop. Sure enough, his skull was too tough. I spat, stood up, and pressed my foot against the end of the nail. This is your dowry gift. I pushed hard with my toe, driving the nail all the way in. His toes curled tightly, then relaxed. A gurgling sound came from his throat, then silence. I yanked out the candle holder, panting heavily, rolled off the bed, glanced at the bloodstains on my hands, and rubbed them onto my upper thigh. Finally, I took some knockout medicine, forced it into my mouth, swallowed, and lay back down. I needed to fake it. The authorities might send a doctor to check my pulse later. At last, I retrieved a yellowed contract from the secret compartment in the mother-in-law Lu's bed and unfolded it slowly. Contract made by Lu, receiving 30 taels of silver from the Dong family, agreeing that daughter-in-law Yao Nyang will bear a child for Dong family's Anyo by surrogate. Any offspring shall belong to the Dong family immediately, with no objection from the Lu family. No oral agreements. This contract stands as proof. Underneath the main text was a smaller note, the handwriting crooked but legible. 3 taels of silver. Yao family daughter's contract of servitude. Signed by Yao mother's fingerprint. My concubine mother sold me off cheaply for a mere 3 taels of silver. And my husband sold me to that fool for 30 taels to bear his child. A sickly sweet taste rose in my throat. I bit down hard on my lower lip until the metallic rust flavor spread in my mouth. Taking a deep breath, I quickly destroyed both contracts. I stuffed the entire sum of 43 taels of silver into my shoes and socks, leaving some loose coins tucked by my chest. Might come in handy later. Turning, I stepped out of the room. The old shrew was indeed unconscious on the floor. I dragged her inside, deftly undoing her robe sash, poured the remaining knockout medicine into her cloth bag, and scattered the original incense ash. At that moment, the fool watched my movements with heavy breathing. I glanced down at the woman on the floor. Only her undergarment remained. The fool suddenly dropped down, staring at her pale shoulder, swallowing hard. I raised an eyebrow. Anyo, want to be the groom? He nodded blankly. I grabbed his hand and placed it on Lu's chest. I'll teach you something more fun later. His fingers trembled as if shocked. His pants dampened quickly. Then I wiped the bloodstains from the candle holder with Lu's robe and slipped it into her hand. Finally, dipping my finger into the still wet blood on the official's nostril, I scrawled clumsily in his palm.
Lu.
I must make sure everything is foolproof.
5.
From outside the window came faint sounds of flutes and pipes. The wedding feast in the front yard was reaching its peak. I swiftly undid the fasteners of the bridal gown. The bright red embroidered cloud-patterned cape slipped to the floor, revealing a pure white inner garment. Mother-in-law Lou was as soft as muddy clay, her head constantly tilting to one side. I scratched a few bloody marks on the official's arm with her fingernails, then pried open her fingers and stuffed in some of the official's hair. Lift her legs. The fool obediently grabbed Wang's legs, and together we heaved her onto the wedding bed like a sack of grain. Watch closely. I straddled Wang's waist, holding the fool's hand to feel along the sash of her clothes. This is called untying the true love knot. He learned quickly, his short, thick fingers even managing to pull apart the ties of the embroidered pouch covering her belly. When Lou's aged breasts were exposed by candlelight, the fool whimpered like a puppy. Suddenly, cheers erupted from the front yard. Someone shouted, "Time to have fun in the bridal chamber." I shivered all over and quickly flipped the official onto Lou. The official's nostrils were pressed right against Lou's neck, as if kissing. The fool imitated him and pressed down. Wrong. I grabbed his collar and pulled him back. Like this. I guided him to pull down his pants. He suddenly bit my ear, mumbling, "Dad pressing Mom?" The candle flame pop burst, sweat dampened my back. At that moment, the fool suddenly lunged forward, tearing at my inner garment. "Time for your bridal chamber," he panted like a beast, his yellow teeth biting my collarbone. The night breeze carried the scent of burnt candle wax into the hall. I didn't dodge. Instead, I drew a steady breath amid the chaos. Yes, it's time to consummate with him. A faint smile tugged at my lips. With fingertips stained in vermilion, I gently flicked the fool. "Want to sleep with sister?" His dull eyes suddenly lit up, his Adam's apple bobbing as he nodded, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Good boy, let's go to the hall." I lowered my voice, soothing like coaxing a child. "Don't disturb that pair of lovers, okay?" He eagerly followed. The moonlight in the main hall was pale, casting his face in a bluish-gray hue. I slowly unbuttoned the apricot-colored outer robe. As the sash dropped to the floor, the fool's breathing suddenly grew harsh. His pants were wet with a warm patch that splashed onto my bare thigh. I yanked his messy hair just as footsteps approached outside.
Bang.
The door was kicked open. I collapsed to the floor. Before closing my eyes, the last thing I saw was Lou Z's lantern swaying in his hand. The candle flickered and popped, revealing his face, the fake drunken expression cracking inch by inch. He froze in place, eyes scanning my disheveled clothes, then the fool's loose belt, finally landing on the glaring bloodstains between my legs. "Everyone out." He barked sharply at the crowd behind him. He locked the door, strode forward, and checked my injuries. The moment his fingertip touched the blood, his pupils shrank. He rushed swiftly into the inner room. Then came the sharp slap of flesh hitting palm, mixed with Lou Z's suppressed growl. "Mother, wake up." Suddenly, with a clang, the candle holder slipped from Lou's limp fingers, the bronze body hitting the blue brick floor. Lou Z's pupils narrowed. Fearing to alarm the guests outside, he hurriedly bent down to pick it up. I squinted, pretending to be faint. But then I saw fool Anyo crawling over again, his rough fingertips almost touching my ankle. Help." I feigned waking, barely whispering. Lou Z pounced like a panther, grabbed the fool's collar, and slammed him to the ground hard. Lady Yao, his temples bulging with veins, cold sweat dripping from his tight jaw. His voice was low but trembling with tension. "Do not, under any circumstances, alert outsiders." I curled up in the corner of the bed, fingers clutching the disheveled bridal gown, eyes wide like a startled deer. "Husband, what exactly happened?" I was just so drowsy. Before I finished, Lou suddenly let out a long, low groan and slowly woke.
6.
Her blurry vision slowly focused, landing on the disheveled village chief beside her. You lecher." That roar exploded like thunder, instantly shattering the night's silence.
Bang.
The door was forcefully kicked open, and countless torches flooded the inner room with light, exposing the chaotic mess. Lou Z gripped the fool's collar tightly with her left hand, while her right clenched the blood-stained bronze candlestick. On the couch, the mother-in-law Madame Lu's hair was disheveled, her eyes bloodshot, as she pointed fiercely at the half-dressed village chief on the floor, shouting, "That old thief dared to." The crowd immediately erupted in uproar. Heavens! This is divine punishment. How could the village chief be here? The scene was in utter chaos. The torchlight flickered wildly across the horrified faces, like restless ghosts. Suddenly,
Ah!
a heart-wrenching scream tore through the night air. Village chief's wife, Madame Dong, let out an unearthly howl and rushed forward, lunging at the bed. She swung her arms in wide arcs, slapping the man on the bed with several loud smacks. The jade-inlaid armor scraped several bloody scratches across his face, but he remained unmoved. "Husband, husband, wake up. What's wrong with you?" Her usually tidy hair was now wild and unkempt like a madwoman's. Her bloodshot eyes finally fixed on the naked Madame Lu beside her. A terrifying murderous glare flashed in her eyes as she lunged fiercely at the limp Lu. She grabbed Lu's tangled hair, her cinnabar-stained nails digging deep into the scalp. "You old slut! How dare you seduce my husband?" Lu, jolted awake by the pain, saw it was Madame Dong and screamed harshly, "Let go, you venomous woman!" She kicked viciously at Dong's chest. As Dong staggered, Lu grabbed one of her pearl earrings and yanked hard. Drops of blood rolled down from Dong's earlobe, staining her snow-white collar. "I'll tear your ugly face apart." Madame Dong went completely mad, claws raking toward Lu's face. Lu hurriedly raised her hands to block but was seized by Dong, who tore open her front, exposing a large patch of wrinkled skin. The onlookers gasped. "Look at this old prostitute's body." Madame Dong sneered loudly. "Probably even the girls in the brothel have a better figure than you." She spat thick phlegm that landed on Lu's exposed chest. Lu was overwhelmed with shame and fury, suddenly biting down on Dong's wrist. "If anything happens to my husband," Dong, panting heavily, suddenly grabbed Lu's hair and slammed her head against the bedpost. "I'll bury your whole family with you." At that moment, I leaned against the carved bedpost, my legs suddenly going weak. The effect of the knockout drug was fully taking hold. My vision darkened in waves. My fingers gripped the edge of the bed tightly, but I couldn't stop myself from sliding down. "Husband," I whispered faintly, my voice lost in the chaotic noise. Amid the confusion, someone shouted, "Call the magistrate! Call the magistrate!" I leaned on the bedpost as my consciousness ebbed like a tide. Hiss! I bit my tongue, blood spreading the metallic taste in my mouth. The sharp pain pierced through the drug's effects, barely keeping a sliver of clarity. The constables arrived swiftly. The lead captain shouted fiercely, "Arrest them all!" Lu Zi was pushed to the ground. The candlestick clattered beside her. She struggled and yelled, "It's a false accusation, sir."
7. Bang!
The judge's wooden gavel slammed down heavily. The magistrate's office was brightly lit. The county magistrate scanned the crowd with a dark expression. Disheveled Madame Lu, unconscious village chief. The drooling fool from the Dong family, clueless Lu Zi. And me, pale and supported by others. "Bold Madame Lu," the magistrate barked, "you framed the village chief and were caught red-handed. What do you have to say for yourself?" Lu's hair hung loose. She suddenly lifted her head. "Your Honor, this old woman truly knows nothing." She pointed at me with venom in her eyes. It was her. She must have drugged me.
Oh!
The magistrate raised an eyebrow. "Madame Yao, do you have any defense?" I weakly knelt and kowtowed. This humble wife, on my wedding night, after drinking the chicken soup given by my mother-in-law, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw my mother-in-law with a village chief. I choked just right. I dare not say more. The constables presented the evidence. The blood-stained candlestick. The pulse records of Lu and me, both confirmed poisoned by a sedative. And all the soup bowls. "Your Honor," I added in a trembling voice, "before I fainted, I saw my mother-in-law put drugs into the wedding wine." Lu flew into a rage. That cheap poison clearly belongs to. Silence. The magistrate cut her off coldly. Madam Liu, if you accuse your daughter-in-law of poisoning, do you have any witnesses? There was physical evidence left in the bowl I drank from, but hers had been cleaned thoroughly by the kitchen staff. Liu was at a loss for words. Suddenly, the coroner stepped forward to report. The village chief was injured inside his nasal cavity. The weapon is a long, blunt object, this candlestick nail. The wound penetrated diagonally from top to bottom into his brain with great force. The magistrate narrowed his eyes. Liu Zi, where were you at the time of the incident? Without hesitation, Liu replied, I was drinking and chatting with classmates. Liar! Madame Zhao screamed. I saw him holding the candlestick standing right beside my husband. Your Honor, please judge. Liu Zi suddenly knelt and banged his forehead hard on the brick floor. The candlestick in my hand was picked up from the ground. I never used it to commit a crime. A constable hurried in holding a paper-wrapped package, reporting, Your Honor, this was found on Madame Liu. The magistrate unfolded it, half a package of unused knockout powder. Liu's face turned pale, but she still shouted, This isn't mine. It's planted by that bitch. Liu Zi also knelt, voice trembling. Your Honor, I have studied hard for years. I could never do such a heinous thing. Someone must be framing me. The coroner sneered, stepped forward again. Your Honor, the palm print on the village chief's hand is Liu's, and the candlestick only bears their mother and son's fingerprints. The magistrate squinted, about to speak, when Madame Dong collapsed to her knees, weeping bitterly. Please, Honorable Magistrate, save us. My husband's life is uncertain. Without torture, that poison woman won't confess. In that case, the magistrate threw down his fire poker. All three will be dragged away and receive 30 lashes each. When I was dragged to the punishment bench, I used my sleeve to secretly slide all the small silver coins hidden in my chest cloth into the executioner's hand. He flipped his wrist, making the silver disappear, and barely perceptibly nodded at me. Miss, endure a little longer, he whispered as he raised the paddle high, but when it came down, he eased up by about 70%. The heavy wedding dress skirt billowed perfectly to conceal how much force was actually applied.
Slap.
The sound was loud, but the blow landed with only 30% strength. I timed my cries of pain just right, and out of the corner of my eye saw Liu Zi being hit hard, flesh smashed, blood gradually soaking through his plain undershirt. After the punishment, I collapsed weakly to the ground, and with my peripheral vision, I saw Liu Zi dragging his bloody, battered body inch by inch toward me. Madam Ya, he whispered, sweat pouring down his forehead, voice low. Just admit to the crime. Say my mother forced you. When I become top scholar, I'll come back for you in glory. I closed my eyes and tilted my head, fainted.
8.
Liu Zi cursed quietly, then crawled over to Liu Shi's side. Mother, you're old now. Why don't you confess first? Your son swears he'll pull some strings at the government office to get you out. Under the beating, Liu Shi howled in pain, but finally couldn't endure the torture any longer. Her trembling finger pressed a bloody seal onto the confession paper. Her cloudy eyes were filled with hatred, yet she still hissed, It was me. I was confused for a moment. The Li Zheng forced himself on me. I truly couldn't bear the humiliation. The magistrate nodded in satisfaction and put away the confession. With a sharp rap of the judge's gavel, he declared, The suspect Liu Shi is to be detained pending trial. The others may return home for now. I was weakly helped to stand by the officers. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liu Zi being carried on a door panel. His hips and legs were a bloody mess, but he still forced himself to glance at me. Back in the dilapidated Liu family courtyard, Liu Zi and I were roughly settled into a side room by the constables. No sooner had the door closed than he grabbed my wrist tightly. Yaonyang, now it's just the two of us. They'll hold back on you since you're just a woman, his face twisted in pain, but he still managed a weak smile. Once I recover and take the exam, I won't forget what you did for me today. I lowered my eyes, hiding the scorn in them, and gently tucked the blanket around him. Husband, take good care of your wounds. The next day, in the Liu household, Liu Zi lay face down on the bed, his hips and back a bloody mess. Turning over was so painful sweat poured from his brow. I was able to move freely by then. I wrote a letter and sent it home to my parents and younger brother. The mother-in-law had been thrown in jail, and once Liu Zi went to the capital for the exam, this house would be mine alone. I invited my whole family to come enjoy it. Then I brought some medicine into the inner room with a smile playing on my lips. Husband, it's time for your medicine. Liu Zi struggled to lift his head, eyes full of pain. Thanks to you, Yaonyang. I stirred the medicine gently and spoke softly. You flatter me, husband. I was born yours, and in death, I'll be your ghost. Come, finish your medicine. Don't leave a drop. He stared at the dark, thick medicine and shuddered suddenly. What medicine is this? I leaned close, whispering in his ear. Just some medicine to purify your body. His pupils shrank sharply. I smiled as I brought the bowl to his lips. Suddenly, Liu Zi raised his hand and overturned the bowl. The dark brown liquid splashed onto the bedding. Wretch, he hissed, the sudden movement ripping open the cane wounds on his hips. His face contorted in pain, but he still forced a threatening glare at me. So it was always you?
Why?
Yaonyang, haven't we always been loving? I slowly pulled a cloth from my sleeve and gently wiped the spilled medicine from my hand. Loving? I chuckled coldly. You mean the love you showed when you sold me to the lunatic's bed at the Dong family for 30 taels of silver? His pupils shrank sharply. Then he forced calm again. Nonsense. That was all my mother's idea. I had no knowledge of it. Oh. I slowly took out a stack of silver notes from my bosom. Then I'll happily accept these. Liu Zi's face drained of color instantly, his lips trembling. Where did you get these? Also, I leaned closer, my voice soft and terrifying. All the silver Liu Shi was hiding was tucked behind the ancestral tablets in the shrine. It was your secret money to prepare for your trip to the exam, right? His expression completely collapsed, the fear in his eyes now impossible to hide. You poison woman, what will you do? I sneered, cutting him off as I pulled out a shining pair of scissors from my waist. Report me to the authorities? Too bad your mother has already confessed. As for you, I waved the scissors in front of his face. The cold gleam reflected off his pale face. Now the whole county knows. Liu the scholar, shamed by his mother's crime, castrated himself to show his resolve. Liu Zi trembled all over, then suddenly shouted hoarsely, Help! Someone save me! I acted quickly, pressing the cloth soaked in sedative firmly over his nose and mouth.
9.
His struggles gradually weakened, his eyelids drooping heavily. Passing out so soon? I clicked my tongue lightly, then tied his limbs firmly to the bedposts with hemp rope and gagged him. But then I thought, to punish him in such a muddled way, wouldn't that be like playing music to an ox? I turned and fetched a basin of well water mixed with crushed ice, then with a splash poured it all over his head. Liu Zi jerked awake, coughing violently but muffled by the cloth, only able to widen his bloodshot eyes. Awake. I smiled sweetly as I picked up the scissors and slowly heated the tip over the candle flame. The metal gradually glowed red-hot, the tip turning a terrifying orange red. Don't rush. I soaked a cloth in strong liquor and pressed it gently on his festering whip wounds. The alcohol seeped into the flesh, and he immediately convulsed all over, veins bulging on his neck, muffled groans escaping his gagged throat, cold sweat soaking his clothes. I watched his face twist in pain with satisfaction, waving the red-hot scissors in front of his eyes. Dear husband, I whispered softly, as if coaxing a child, just hold on a little longer, the pain will soon stop. While he was terrified, I suddenly threw back the covers and pulled down his trousers. I stared at the spot, a slow smile curling my lips. Right here. PFT. The scorching scissors clamped down without hesitation on the blackened, corrupted root. Ugh. Lu Zi's eyes flew wide open, pupils shrinking sharply. A heart-wrenching groan exploded from his throat, but weakened by fever, he could only twitch wildly, like a dying fish. I didn't lessen the pressure. The scissors tightened bit by bit, feeling the faint sizzling sound of flesh burning under the heat, the acrid burnt smell spreading. "Does it hurt?" I asked softly, then squeezed hard suddenly. Crack.
Ah.
He finally screamed out loud, a piercing sound unlike any human voice, his entire face contorted nearly to the breaking point, cold sweat pouring down like rain. I released the scissors, watching with satisfaction as the mangled, bloody flesh fell onto the bedding, fresh blood instantly soaking the sheets. All done. Finally clean. I picked up the liquor-soaked cloth and gently pressed it onto his gushing wound. Hiss. He struggled wildly, fingers clawing the wooden bedboard until his nails cracked and bled, yet no matter what, he could not escape my grip. Don't move." I gently held his shoulders, while my other hand took up the pre-prepared needle and thread to carefully stitch the wound closed. I cut the thread ends, lightly stroked his sweat-dampened forehead, and whispered softly, "Dear husband, being castrated is your blessing." His eyes glazed over, lips trembling, seeming to want to say something, but only able to make faint panting sounds. I leaned close and whispered in his ear, "Don't worry, I won't let you die after all. We still need to wait for my family to come find us." Then I dragged that heap of rotten flesh to the woodshed and quietly waited for my family to come seek me. That day, the aunt came to visit. "Yao Nyang," she shouted loudly as she entered. "I heard your mother-in-law got thrown in prison? This house will be yours from now on." She greedily looked around the Liu family estate, eyes gleaming. I lowered my head to hide a cold smile and obediently bowed. "Aunt, you've traveled far. Your daughter has prepared wine and dishes." During the meal, I served her attentively, watching as she swallowed the food spiked with sedatives bite by bite. She even pretended to wipe tears while saying, "Poor my son, the Liu family treated you so badly." No, soon it won't be painful anymore. Late at night, faint rustling sounds came from the woodshed. Lu Zi broke free of his ropes, dragging his bloodied lower body as he crawled toward the main house. Under the moonlight, he clenched a broken shard of porcelain in his hand, eyes wild with madness. "Wretch, I'll bury your whole family with me." Meanwhile, in the guest room, "What's going on?" The aunt suddenly woke up but found her limbs weak. "Teach this food has." She opened her eyes wide in terror and saw Lu Zi emerging from the shadows. Outside the courtyard gate, I stood silently, staring at the locked door, listening to the heart-rending screams from inside. The flickering firelight illuminated the smile at my lips. "Look at this lively reunion night. Aunt, when you sold your daughter, did you ever think those 30 taels of silver would cost you your life?" Boom. The instant the flames surged up, the entire estate turned into a fiery hell. 3 days later, the hottest gossip in the county tea house was, Scholar Liu, unable to bear the shame, killed Yu family in the middle of the night and then set himself on fire. On the official road heading south to Jiangnan, a woman wearing a hood flipped through a newly bought household registry. Chen, age 18, father deceased as a scholar candidate. The sound of horse hooves came from behind. A group of constables rushed by, holding a warrant for arrest. I gently lifted the carriage curtain, letting the spring breeze carry away the torn paper with the name Yao Nyang printed on it. The end.